dropping everything to give his attention to me. And that stuck with me. That absolutely stuck with me. So great listeners are really good at giving their attention. And they do it with furniture. You know, what I do is, in my office, I tend to move away from my desk, because that's my badge of authority. I always move away from my desk so that I can sit down and talk to somebody. And I change the physical location so that we communicate. Eye contact. I give them eye contact. I look at them, and usually 2 to 5 seconds is enough when you're talking to somebody, and then break, and then look back at them again. Less than 2 seconds, you're shifty. More than 5 seconds, why me? Why are you staring at me? This kind of thing. So you gotta watch that kind of thing. Generally, an open body posture. You know what I mean? So you look around this room and you watch what people are doing. What are they doing with their body language? You know, what are they doing? You can see people who are dead bored, and people who are really interested, people who are tired, that kind of thing. So we give an awful lot off when we're communicating with people. So the attending is also very important. Great listeners reflect back what the other person is saying. A great listener, you'll always hear them say, so what you're saying is, so what you're saying is. So think about what that does to you. If somebody is doing that with you, if somebody is listening to you and they say, so let me say that, what you're saying is, it's great, it's absolutely great. Because an awful lot of people say, I know what's wrong with you. And all that sort of thing, you feel like reaching for your phone. You know, and you think, why don't you just listen to me? Why don't you just listen to me? And when people say, so what you're saying is, so that tends to be, that reflecting tends to be a kind of a form of paraphrasing. So what you're saying is we need to reduce costs. So what you're saying is you think that person is bullying you. So what you're saying is, and that's really great, you're paraphrasing. You're not parroting them, you're paraphrasing them. Parroting would be really insulting, repeating what they said. But paraphrasing is interesting. Great listeners do a lot of grunting. So many jokes. So great listeners do an awful lot of grunting. So when you're talking to someone, especially on a phone, do you ever talk to somebody who doesn't grunt? You call them and there's loads of silence. You think, are you still there? And then they go, that's good, okay, now we're okay. That's great. Now, great listeners do that. It doesn't mean I agree with you. It means keep going, keep going. I'm still here. Great listeners do an awful lot of that. And face to face, great listeners do an awful lot of nodding. Does it mean they agree with you? No, it just means keep going, keep going. I'm getting it, keep going, I'm getting it. And they're really good at it. They're really good at that. And you don't really believe that they're agreeing with you, but they're really keeping you going. Great listeners do an awful lot of exploring. They do an awful lot of open and closed questions. What time are you going? Is a closed question. Will you go there? Is a closed question because it has a yes, no answer. Very precise answers. Closed questions. Open questions are whys and hows. And great listeners are good at whys and hows. And you're very good at listening because a lot of you are doing writing, which is great because that shows that really good listening. You don't write things down. I'm not sure how you're going to survive. Great listeners summarize. So when they get to the end of the conversation, so let me get this right. And they join together all the little reflections they did in the series of listening. So if you think about it, great listeners turn off the pigeonholing, they turn off the bias, they stop thinking about where you came from. You know, the only good thing that ever came out of there is the road that doesn't. That kind of thing, that kind of bias kind of thing, where they take a label, your name, your face, your colour, your whatever it is, and they stop that. They're great at that. And they're great at attending to you, making you feel as if you're really needed, and you feel as if they're the Bill Clinton idea many years ago of people who look from one eye to the other. They train themselves to actually show that they're attending to you. They look from one of your eyes to the other, and they give you that feeling that you're the only person in the world. It's amazing that attention you get. They reflect very well because they say things like, so what you're saying is, I think women are much better than that than men. I think men tend to get onto the conclusion much quicker, and women tend to say, so let me get what you're saying, that kind of thing. And the summarising bit at the end is, or the exploring bit is, tell me more. Why? Why did that happen? How did that happen? And you get this really deep understanding, and you summarise at the end. Okay, so let's make a list of the kind of behaviours which make this work. So there's a kind of a cyclical thing, but it can actually be quite disjointed, and people can move back and forward, and that's okay, no problem with that. So there's open queues and closed queues. There's summarising. There's open body. There's reflecting. There's nodding. There's grunting. And there's eye contact. So when I'm watching managers, employees, listening, I tend to be looking out for those behaviours. And even if I'm not picking up the whole conversation, I can tend to see whether somebody is really listening well to another person. People say they're great listeners, fine, but I'll judge that on the basis of your behaviour. So people often look inside themselves and say, I'm really a good listener, very good listener. But if you think about it, I'd rather see your behaviour. Okay, let's move this on a bit. So what would that look like as a model? Because I think it's important to say, okay, to have a picture in your head about how this works. So what's the picture in your head about how this works? Models are great in an example as well, because there's something to draw, very different. I tend to think that this is a bit like a cone. And two people are kind of on each side of the abyss. Two people on very different sides of the abyss. So in other words, there's a gap of understanding between two people. And a person who is a very good listener, who tends to pick this stuff up and use it, and employs these behaviours, tends to reduce the distance between the two people until you get to a point of kind of shared understanding. Until you get to a point of shared understanding. That's really important. So if you think about this as a shape, so in other words, how does it descend? It descends by this. And when I get to here, I've reflected and I've explored and I've summarised and everything like that. And I really think that we get to some kind of understanding of that. So, just to summarise as we go along here, there is a kind of a circuit to this, there's a kind of a process to this that people will employ. They'll vary it, but they'll employ it. And they really go and employ most of it. How would I recognise it? I would see these kind of behaviours going on all the time. What does it look like in terms of a shape? If you were to see it, it tends to be two people who start out on opposite sides of a chasm, and gradually a careful listening process on the part of both people can actually get it to move towards a point. Okay, so still, okay, Paul, what would that look like on Monday morning if I was a manager? Well, I'm thinking about three things that tend to happen in managers' lives. Apart from general listening, which is great, and managers are really good, if they listen, they're very effective. And in fact, you become more effective if you become a good listener. You become more powerful. You become more effective in your work if you become a good listener. But there are three very difficult episodes in a manager's life that if the manager was to employ more effective listening, that their life would be much better and they would be more effective as managers. So there are three things. The first thing is called a grievance. The second thing is called counselling, and the third thing is called discipline. The three real difficult speed bumps in a manager's life are dealing with grievances when people are complaining. You've discriminated against me. You have shown me bias. I am being badly treated by this organisation. Or when you need to counsel somebody to improve their performance. Performance drops off. How do you get the performance back up? Counselling will do it. And discipline. When somebody's performance consistently goes against the grain, how do you introduce discipline to get people back on track? So there's three episodes in a manager's life that give them most trouble, and by employing this model, you can actually improve it quite a lot. So first is easy enough. What happens to you when somebody says, I'm not getting enough overtime, you're discriminating against me, you're treating me less favourably, or as one of my employees once said, you're not giving me enough eye contact. Okay. So somebody has a grievance, and they have a complaint, and they bring it to you. And it's usually something that they're being not treated as well. I'm not getting enough opportunities to shine here, or I didn't get that job, and I need to be promoted to that next level. And I should have, and I have a just cause, and I have a complaint against you, and I want you to fix it. And you're sitting there thinking, oh. And it's really difficult because when I was a general ops manager, what used to happen is somebody would be thinking about that complaint for 3 weeks and bring it to me at 11:30 on a Monday morning, and I'd be expected to solve it in 3 seconds. And I always found those ones were challenging. But I follow this idea. The first thing I do with anybody, student comes to me or whatever it is, I listen to them. Honestly, I'm delighted to hear. I want to find out what it is that's going on. And when I get to that point here of using my LARES, I now have a good understanding about what's bothering you in your words, because I'm going to summarize it for you. And you'll be able to say, that's it. So that's the pain I have. And then what I tend to do is, I tend to break. Most of the time I tend to break away because I do one or two things. I want to have time to think about it, and also at the same time, I don't want to make quick decisions that will actually maybe come back to haunt me later on. So, whatever you're asking for, there's going to be two options. There's going to be a yes option, and there's going to be a no option. Yes, you can have the advancement or the promotion. No, you can't. And then there's two ways to deal with that. So, if I'm going to say yes, you can have the promotion or the advancement, the first thing I'm going to talk to, the first person I'm going to talk to is my boss. And I always do this. I always go off and talk to my boss. If somebody says I want more overtime or I want an advancement or a promotion, I go and talk to my boss. The reason is I want to make sure I'm not going to create an anomaly. So if I give this person the overtime or if I give this person the advancement, will somebody else want it? Will somebody else be justified in having it? And if that's okay, I just go and tell. I go back to the person and I say, good news, it's a yes. Well done, you got your grievance. And I always go back and say, well done, you got your grievance. The worst thing you can be as a manager is a dog in the manger, is give things with a grumpy old face on you. If the person won their grievance, be big enough to say, well done, you got your grievance. The second one is where you're saying no. And I always go back to my boss. You see, if I go back to you and say you're not getting the overtime, I suspect the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go to the union. And what's going to happen is in the morning they're going to go with their employee to the boss and say that person needs the overtime and the union is behind them. And what tends to happen then is sometimes the boss acts like the big woman or the big man and grants it over my head, and it weakens me. So as a manager, one of the things I always do is I always go to the boss and I say, Jane or Peter has come to me looking for more overtime, and I kind of want to say no. But if we're going to say yes tomorrow under pressure from the union, let me say yes today, and I look like the big guy, instead of you humiliating me in the morning by overruling me. So what's it going to be? And not every boss likes that approach, but I'll tell you one thing, it saves you your status as a manager. So when you're in that situation, check the ground. What's going to happen tomorrow if the pressure comes on? And if the pressure comes on and we're going to cave, make me a big guy now. Because next week you're going to ask me to bring that team charging up the hill, singing the company song and doing the impossible. And I'll be leading them. And if you want me to be strong enough to lead them, make me the big person now. Don't humiliate me. Don't undermine me. So I get the agreement from the boss. And then, if it's still a no, I tell and sell. I don't say things like, I never say things like, my boss decided no. That weakens you. People realise that you're not loyal. If you're not loyal to your boss, you're not going to be loyal to your subordinates. So the whole point about it is tell and sell, and put it as your decision. And tell the person their options. Like, you've got options. If I'm saying no to you, you still have options. You can actually go to the union, you can go to HR, or you can go to the Workplace Relations Commission. They're your options. Because I don't want you running back to your desk, bleeding all over everybody, saying how badly you've been treated, and stopping work. That's really important. Okay, so that's grievance. The second one is counselling. Counselling is where somebody is not doing their job and somebody is not performing as well. So what I tend to do is I tend to call them into the office, tell them the facts, ask them why. So you've been late for the last 10 days, or about 45 minutes. That's a fact. What's the problem? Why? Why is this going on? What would you do immediately after that? I think the first thing you should do is you should listen. You might have something really serious going on in your life. There's no point in me clattering you and making things worse and being a total disciplinarian. I need to find out what's happening, see can I help them. So I need to find out the cause. The cause in your view as to what's happening. And very simply, I just work out, listen, what are your options? Let's list some options. And I listen to the options of the person. And I ask the person to come up with the options, because it's counselling, right? And the whole deal behind this is, I could find solutions. I've often told guys to get a lift with Mickey, or get a lift with Johnny, or whatever it is, and they come in late the next day and they say, oh, your idea didn't work. He was late too. You know, so I never take that on myself. I wear my Teflon jacket when it comes to talking to people. And the monkey's on your shoulder. Right, what do you think the options are? Choose the best one. And if any of them are crap, and I can't live with them, I'll cross them out, and the ones that work. And I'll say, okay, when are you going to do it? And I get a commitment out of them. So it's their decision, it's their commitment, their date, they're going to fix it, and I'm delighted. If that doesn't work, we tend to move into another phase. So if consistently someone isn't performing, how does communication work then? Well, you're into a different discussion, but you're still into facts and why. The situation might have changed, might be different, so I still want to know. I asked the question, why are you still doing it? You committed. Why are you still being late, etc.? You committed. You told me that you'd be early, and the thing is still deteriorating. What's going on? So I'm still in relation to the cause here. Now, it's different, because one of the things I've got to tell a person is, if you don't sort this out, here's some consequences. Whatever the company says they are, you might get demoted, you might get suspended, you might lose your job even. And I've got to spell those out for that person. Listen, if this keeps up, here are the consequences. You might lose 3 days pay, something might happen, etc., etc. Or it will happen. So whatever the consequences are. As a manager, I always say, I don't want this. This is not what I signed up for. I didn't sign up to beat people or to apply discipline to people. If I will, if I have to, but I don't want this. So how do we fix it? And although I still want the person to choose options, I might be a little bit more directive at this point and say, okay, this is your last chance to learn, so we need to be a bit more directive about the options, about how you're going to correct this. And I get the person to commit. So that's a different way of looking at this model. The model really is talking about listening and feedback. And if you think about it, listening is just like about a process. How it would work for me in a working situation. These are my behaviours. This is what it looks like physically. But then how would you apply it to the really important challenges that managers have? And that's how you take a theory and you say, what would it look like in